And it goes a little something like...
Throughout Ethiopia's history, how many Muslims do you think left the religion? Is leaving Islam a new phenomenon, or has it always happened? If it always happened, who were those Ethiopian ex-Muslims and why did they leave? This video sheds light onto the history of ex-Muslims who have lived in modern-day Ethiopia. The ex-Muslims listed in this video have lived between the 16th and 20th centuries. We hope that this helps raise awareness of the legacy and contributions of former Ethiopian Muslims and humanizes this marginalized and persecuted minority, whether they live in Ethiopia or the diaspora. Before we can learn about these individuals, it's important to understand the concept of religious identity in Ethiopia between the 16th and 20th centuries. Because in Islam, the punishment for apostasy is death. In Muslim-controlled areas, people born into Muslim families could not publicly identify with any other religion or even as non-religious. This created an environment where one's public identity may not be a reflection of what one truly believes. Because apostates could be killed if it were known that they are not Muslim, these individuals are rarely documented in historical records. Many of the individuals in our list were recorded in the Futuh al-Habasha during the devastating Ethiopian-Adal War of the 16th century. An important note is that this document was written by the conservative Muslim and supporter of Imam Ahmad Sihab ad-Din Ahmed. If a Muslim soldier was found to be associating with the Christian Ethiopians or fought against the Muslims, Sihab characterized them as an infidel who converted to Christianity. In some cases, he may have inflated the Muslims' personal religious identity with their political affiliation, mischaracterizing their opposition to Imam Ahmad's war as apostasy. Interestingly, the first documented person to leave Islam in Ethiopia was a companion of Islam's prophet. According to Islamic tradition, Ubayd Allah ibn Jash was an early follower of Muhammad and one of the migrants to Ethiopia. Upon arriving in Ethiopia, he eventually left Islam, converted to Christianity, and never returned to Arabia. 1. Naqtiya. At one point during Imam Ahmad's war against the Ethiopian Empire, there were 7,000 soldiers who were under the command of 5 soldiers. One of those commanders was a man named Naqtiya. Naqtiya was a Muslim who later left Islam. Imam Ahmad sent a letter to the wazir in Bali, ordering him to keep the people who became Muslim and kill anyone who refused to convert to Islam. He ordered the killing of Naqtiya by hanging him at the gate of the city of Zayla. In June or July 1532, the wazir followed the order and Naqtiya was murdered by hanging. 2. Qasim. Qasim was an ex-Muslim who was put in charge of Yan Amora, an area of land between Tigray and Engat. He fought battles against the Muslims and brought back the Christians to their homes after they fled when the Muslims invaded. Qasim protected the Christians and tried to help them keep their property. This made the Muslim soldiers very upset. A Somali soldier captured him. Qasim was then ordered to be executed by the Imam. 3. Kharej. Kharej was a young man, possibly a teenager, who grew up in Imam Ahmad's home. He then left Islam and was captured by the Muslims. The Imam ordered his head to be cut off. The Muslim soldiers were sympathetic to the young man and intervened on his behalf. They pleaded for the Imam to forgive him and spare his life. The Imam agreed and did not kill Kharej. 4. Anas. Anas was a page of Imam Ahmad. He left the Muslims with the son of an Ethiopian general named Digelhan. Eventually, the Muslims found him with a group of Christian knights. He was captured, and the Imam ordered both of his hands to be chopped off. 5. Hassan al-Basri. He used to recite the Quran and then left Islam and converted to Christianity. He was captured during the war in Gojam, but then Imam Ahmad forgave him. 6. Abd Asfar Turki. Like Hassan al-Basri, he used to recite the Quran, then left Islam and converted to Christianity. 7. Farasaham Sultan's brother. The name of this ex-Muslim is not known. He was one of many Muslims who left Islam after a famine and plague in Tigray during the Ethiopian-Adal War. His brother Farasaham was a zealous Muslim knight. 8. Wasu Uthman or Asa Usman. Wasu was a converted Muslim who left Islam. He fought against the Muslims. 9. Abba Enbakam, previously known as Abu al-Fath. Enbakam was a Yemeni ex-Muslim Christian. He was born with the name Abu al-Fath to a Muslim father and a Jewish mother. He questioned Islam as a teen in Yemen. He left the country when he was 19 to travel to Ethiopia. He left Islam in his 20s and became an ordained priest when he was 30. He authored and translated many written works, including the Ankasa Amin, which evolved from a letter to Imam Ahmad. The Ankasa Amin criticized Islam and was an attempt to convince the Imam to end the war and convert to Christianity. He was highly educated and contributed greatly to the Ethiopian church. 10. Niwaya Christos, previously known as Sheikh Zacharias. Zacharias was an Amhara sheikh. In 1892, he started preaching against Muslim teachings that were not consistent with the Old Testament, the Gospels, and the Quran. His interpretations were not well received. He was accused of distorting the Quran and destroying the peace of the Muslim community. He was vindicated in 1907 by Emperor Menelik II, who said Zacharias answered from the Quran every accusation brought against him. In 1910, at the age of 65, he converted to Christianity, and so did thousands of his followers. Because the sheikh was a public figure, the government provided bodyguards to protect him from Muslims who wanted to kill him for leaving Islam. 11. Ras Michael of Wallo, previously known as Imam Muhammad Ali. Imam Muhammad Ali was the leader of Wallo province in northern Ethiopia, starting from 1874. His father was Ali Ababullah, a half Somali and half Oromo man. In 1878, Emperor Johannes IV and the Boru Maida Council decreed all Muslims in positions of power within the empire must convert to Christianity. Imam Muhammad Ali was then baptized and given the name Mikhail. He was promoted to the title of Ras, or Duke in English. Ras Mikhail tried to convert Muslims in Wallo to Christianity, but many chose to flee to other areas including Harari. In addition to these ex-Muslims, there are many others who are unnamed and undocumented. For example, it is documented that many Muslims and new Muslim converts during the Ethiopian-Adal War left Islam during a famine and plague in Tigray. As mentioned previously, because in Islam the punishment for apostasy is death, it is dangerous to publicly state that you don't believe. If one never believed or stopped believing, they are forced to lie. When examining the actions of historical figures in Ethiopian and Harari history who are believed to be Muslim, a few stand out. These individuals may have left the religion or never believed in it at all. One of these possible ex-Muslims is Sultan Abu Bakr. In 1520, Sultan Abu Bakr moved the capital of the Adal Sultanate from Dakar to Harare. He also allowed un-Islamic activities like drinking, gambling, and dancing with drums. Quran teachers and sheikhs rebuked him for his conduct. The relaxed laws gave people more personal freedom to decide for themselves how to practice Islam, if at all. But conservative Muslims were unhappy that their interpretation of Sharia law was not enforced on everyone, and labeled the public lack of adherence to Islam as corruption. Abu Bakr was called an enemy of Allah and Muslims for his secular laws. He fought against a conservative Muslim ruler, Garada Boyne, and killed him. He also punished many of his followers. In 1525, after years of tension, an intense civil war broke out between supporters of Sultan Abu Bakr and Imam Ahmad's fundamentalists in response to Abu Bakr's secular laws. Therefore, his lack of Sharia law implementation, the strong reactions against him, and his fight with the conservative Muslim leaders suggest he either had a less strict interpretation of the religion than others, or perhaps wasn't a believing Muslim at all. If he didn't believe in Islam, as the ruler of an Islamic state, he could not say so publicly because he would lose his position and risk losing his life from Muslims who would want to kill him for leaving Islam. Another possible ex-Muslim is Amir Uthman. Amir Uthman was a former slave who was either captured during the jihad or was bought within the Ethiopian Empire. He served in politics under Amir Nur for 15 years and was appointed the next ruler of Harar, instead of Amir Nur's own sons. He converted to Islam at some point after he was owned by Amir Nur. When Uthman ruled in 1567, Harar was in a desperate situation after being ravaged by famine, a deadly plague and war. He was a leader ahead of his time and greatly improved the city. He made a peace treaty with the pagan Oromo community and strengthened the economy by making policies that grew the commerce industry. He also enacted laws that went against Islamic teachings. One was permitting wine drinking. Another law went against the Islamic obligation of khums. Khums is the allocation of 20% of the stolen goods from raids and war to go to those who claim to be descendants of Islam's prophet. Amir Uthman redirected this wealth to go to refugees instead of the alleged descendants of the prophet. His policies made him strongly disliked by some. Uthman is described as neglecting his religious duties, likely prayer, which could mean he either wasn't practicing the religion at all or very little. He was condemned for his irreligious behavior by his conservative opposition. He was also labeled as an enemy of Allah and Muslims. His agreement to return any Oromo who lived in Harar back to their territory was used as fuel for a rebellion against him. Uthman agreed to return a sheikh's daughter in Harar who reverted to Islam back to Oromo territory. When he did so, he made the choice to keep his promise instead of following Islamic scripture. This woman will be discussed later in this video. Just like Abu Bakr, because of his behaviors and the strong reactions from those around him, it appears that he either had a different interpretation of the religion than others, or he wasn't a believing Muslim at all. If he didn't believe in Islam, as the ruler of an Islamic state, he could not say so publicly, because he would lose his position and risk losing his life from Muslims who would want to kill him for leaving Islam. The third possible ex-Muslim is Queen Eleni. In 1509, Queen Eleni of the Ethiopian Empire proposed a strategic alliance with Portuguese leadership. She recognized their naval power and knew Ethiopia was isolated due to Muslim control of the Red Sea. She requested assistance to create a united Christian force to defeat the Islamic military. The Portuguese arrived 11 years later in 1520. At this point, Lebna Dengel was now the leader and didn't see the necessity of partnering with Western Christian power, so he dismissed the Portuguese, sending them home. 2 years later in 1522, Queen Eleni passed away. In 1529, Muslim forces devastated Ethiopia and began what would be a 14-year-long war. Lebna Dengel then reversed his previous policy and sent a desperate letter to the Portuguese, asking for their aid, just like Queen Helene did 20 years ago. It wasn't until 1541, under the leadership of Dom Cristóvão da Gama, that the Portuguese answered the call. Without this help, the Ethiopians may not have been successful in defeating the Islamic army. Ethiopia may have become an Islamic state. While Queen Eleni has long been identified as the daughter of a Hadiyya Muslim leader, there is a recent claim that she was not an ex-Muslim Christian. Instead, it is asserted that she was the consort of Emperor Bayeda Mariam and was always a Christian. In this list of recorded Ethiopian ex-Muslims, almost all of them are men. In general, the number of Ethiopian or Harari women recorded in history are much less than the men. Also, virtually all primary historical sources from Ethiopia or Harar were written by men. It is thus not surprising why the number of recorded ex-Muslim women is low. This lack of documentation makes it difficult to learn about women who left Islam or never believed in it at all. Some of the ex-Muslims in the list converted to Christianity. For others, it is not specified if they converted to another religion or not. Atheists were and are a minority in Ethiopia. It is rare to find documentation of people in the country's past who did not believe in any god. This is likely because in Ethiopia, governments were religious, either Christian or Muslim. There was no separation of church or mosque and state. This meant those who identified as either Christian or Muslim had greater authority and ability to author documents and disseminate them. Anyone who publicly identified as an atheist would not be able to attain political positions and have such power. Starting from 1974, the government of Ethiopia became secular and socialist, marking the end of centuries of religious governance. However, conservative Christians and Muslims continue to make it difficult for atheists from religious families or communities to be free to be themselves without consequences. Some Ethiopian ex-Muslims left Islam and then later returned to it. This could either be a sincere decision or one made under the duress of Islam's apostasy law or oppressive Muslim leaders like Imam Ahmad. One XX Muslim was Uthman bin Dar. Uthman bin Dar converted to Christianity when he was captured by the Ethiopian Empire during the Ethiopian-Adal War. He was then made the governor of Ifat. When Imam Ahmad attacked his territory, he then reverted to Islam along with 20,000 of his soldiers. Another XX Muslim is recorded only as AH. He was the uncle of the Muslim knight, Farasaham Sultan. During the Ethiopian-Adal War, he left Islam and then reverted to Islam. Taki and Urai Ahmad Din were two other XX Muslims. They were Muslim soldiers during the Ethiopian-Adal War who both left Islam, joined the Christian forces, and then returned to the Muslims and reverted to Islam. The last XX Muslim on this list is a Harari woman. In the English account of this woman's life, her name is not recorded, so let's give her one. Let's call her Anai. After the deadly 14-year war in Ethiopia, a drought, famine, and plague, Harari was left devastated. Anai grew up during this unstable time. She was raised in a very religious household. Her father was a sheikh. In the 1560s, Anai left Harari, traveled down to the Oromo territories, and married a non-Muslim Oromo man. It is not clear if she chose to leave or if she was abducted. Maybe Anai was tired of living in a religious society. It is not uncommon for children of religious leaders to leave the faith of their parents. Sometimes having more exposure to a religion, especially from a young age, can push people away. Maybe she wanted something different, an exciting new life away from worshiping Allah. The Oromo community would have believed in Wakafana. This indigenous belief system includes Wak as the creator deity. Wak was a popular god around the Harari region before people converted to Islam. If Anai chose to marry the non-Muslim man, this would never be documented because she was Muslim and came from a family of high status. Her father was a sheikh in Harari at a time when being a religious leader was one of the highest social positions to have. The news of a girl who chose to run away, leave Islam, and marry a non-Muslim man would have brought dishonor to herself and to her family. The only redeemable justification an Islamic society could give is that she was taken against her will. Anai is documented as having left Islam when she lived with the Oromo community. A few years later, she left them, returned to Harari, and allegedly reverted to Islam. Though if she wanted to live in Harari, she wouldn't have the choice to not revert to Islam. We know about this woman's life because a man brought her to another man called Jibril. The man who brought Anai urged Jibril to prevent her from being sent back to the non-Muslim Oromo community. This is because Amir Uthman made a new law that forced anyone to return to the Oromo community if the Oromos requested them to return. Jibril used this situation to fuel a rebellion against Amir Uthman, the possible ex-Muslim discussed earlier. While many ex-Muslims are sincere about leaving the religion, during the Ethiopian-Adal War, 2 soldiers are recorded as pretending to leave Islam and converting to Christianity. They were fake ex-Muslim Christians. Their names were Wanag John and Simu, also known as Sakara. Wanag John was the governor of Ifat and was a Christian who converted to Islam. After being captured by the king of Ethiopia, he pretended to revert to Christianity. He eventually ordered the capturing and throat-slitting of Christian leaders in Bali, and then demanded the civilians to convert to Islam or be killed. He was killed by a Muslim knight. Wanag John's son was named Simu or Sakara. He was a Muslim who worked as a guide for the Muslim soldiers as they invaded the Ethiopian Empire. He was later made into a governor just like his father. After he was captured by the Ethiopian king, he too pretended to convert to Christianity. And he too betrayed the empire by fighting on the side of the Muslims against the Christians. He died in 1535 due to a widespread plague. This video demonstrates how Muslims leaving Islam in Ethiopia is as old as Islam itself. While the first recorded case of an ex-Muslim in Ethiopia dates back to the life of Muhammad, as per Islamic tradition, subsequent documentation of historical Ethiopian ex-Muslims is difficult to find and at times verify. Because of Islam's apostasy law, conservative Muslim leaders, and the lack of secular governments, people born to Muslim families could not publicly identify as a non-believer without risking their life. The ex-Muslim Ethiopians in this list left Islam for various documented reasons. A sincere belief that Islam is not the right religion to follow, politics, circumstance, or even love. They tried to live true to themselves and bravely stood by their own values and beliefs. In doing so, they risked their lives because fundamentalists maligned them as enemies and believed they should be killed for leaving Islam. Many were killed. An Ethiopian Muslim's personal life choices, political affiliation, or governing style could be enough to be deemed a non-believer, regardless of whether or not they were one. The Ethiopian-Adal War highlights how religious identity was used by Imam Ahmad as justification for murder. Christians who refused to leave their religion and convert to Islam were killed, along with anyone Ahmad deemed to be an apostate, though a few were spared. During the war, there are 2 recorded cases of Muslim soldiers who lied about leaving Islam and converting to Christianity to gain the trust of Christians. Because most of Ethiopia's recorded history between the 16th and 20th centuries is about men and written by men, it is not surprising that nearly all recorded ex-Muslims are men. Some ex-Muslims are documented as converting to Christianity, and none are identified as atheists. This is likely due to the long history of religious governments, relatively new adoption of secular governments, and religious conservatives who, to this day, continue to threaten and punish atheists for not believing in their God. While many Ethiopian ex-Muslims remain non-believers until their death, some reverted to Islam. This could be a sincere or forced decision. Ex-Muslims in Ethiopia is thus not a new phenomenon. Rather, what is new is the greater ability to openly identify as an ex-Muslim from this part of the world and tell the life stories of past ex-Muslims.